Some opening shot thoughts. Chicago taxpayers, look out. Mayor Brandon Johnson's CFO Jill Jaworski says a property tax hike is likely for the next year's budget. But today, the mayor himself walked that back a bit and said he is committed to not raising property taxes. He did say that once before in his mayoral campaign before proposing a tax hike, property taxes that is, in his second year. There's good reason to be skeptical this year. The mayor has indicated the city faces a $1 billion deficit. Some alders have put that number closer to $1.7 billion. Now, this week I asked Mayor Johnson if the administration was preparing to make cuts, including to the agency that costs the most, the Chicago Police Department.
Government has to be sharper. Government has to be more productive. But for crying out loud, people want to live in a safe, affordable city. Building more affordable homes, investing in our public institutions, that's what working people are calling for. My budget will reflect what working people are calling for in this city. And it is well past time that those with means put more skin in the game.
So not answering the specific question, but let's read between the lines here. It certainly sounds like some revenue enhancements are in the offing. Fair enough. The mayor is a progressive Democrat, and his ideology is to have a larger government safety net with more tax revenue, especially from higher income earners, to support it. But he is butting up against a reality that he can't change right now. Trump and Republicans are making massive cuts to federal aid that comes to cities and public school districts. And the voters did speak. They rejected the mayor's proposed millionaires tax in March of 2024. Within that framework, big cuts seem unavoidable. The other reality is the local political dynamic. Remember when the mayor proposed a property tax hike this year? Yeah, city council rejected it 50-0. So what makes anyone believe they will dramatically change their position now? And according to the Libertarian Illinois Policy Institute, the city's budget has grown 58% since 2019, or $6 billion. Now, a lot of that was a result of billions in one-time COVID relief money the city received, but that spigot is now turned off. Is it reasonable, then, to ask city leaders to attempt to return to the budget that it was at pre-COVID levels, with the exception of rising mandatory pension costs and inflation? Mayor Johnson clearly needs a political reset. With his poll numbers underwater, this is a way he could start to turn the tide.
Coming up on Paris on Politics.
Tonight, CPS on the brink. School board members debate how to save the financially strapped system from collapse. UChicago becomes the latest hospital to announce it is suspending gender-affirming care for minors in light of the Trump administration's threats. We take the issue on. And one stage, two men, no script. The legendary duo TJ and Dave take us behind the highs and lows of long-form improv as they hit the stage at the Goodman Theatre.
This is Paris on Politics from Fox 32 Chicago.
And welcome to Paris on Politics. Chicago's public school system is on the brink. CPS faces a more than $730 million budget deficit, and the school board president has indicated after a round of layoffs, there's really nowhere else to turn but more borrowing and asking for a bailout from the state. And joining us fresh off tonight's school board meeting are elected board members Aaron G2 Brown and Angel Gutierrez. Thanks, both of you, for being here.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brown, the $730 million budget deficit, you have asked Springfield for more help. The board president has said we need to borrow more. Are those the only two options?
I think at this point, because we have inherited this debt, that anything is on the table. We have to what should not be on the table is to continue to cut on the backs of primarily black and brown students. That's been culture in CPS, and that has to change. So for us, we actually don't think it's a bailout. We think that Illinois has dramatically underfunded education in comparison with other states, and that it's an opportunity to actually do right by the children of not only Chicago, but throughout the state of Illinois. Chicago is not the only district that's suffering. And
Angel Gutierrez, state lawmakers and Governor Pritzker have repeatedly said they have given all the money in the funding formula to CPS and the other districts. There is no $1 billion coming, at least now. They also have no appetite to hold a special session. So then what?
I mean, I think one of the things that we're looking for and that we've asked the district to do is to really go back and look at how do we save dollars in the classroom, right? So that means looking at all our networks, looking at all our other programs, to come back to us with some solutions and making sure that we're continuing right now. I think one of the things that we're doing, and Superintendent King has been leading the charge, is laying groundwork not only for this fiscal year, you know, because we have to have a approved budget by the end of the month, but also laying the groundwork for FY27 and 28, right?
So trying to change a structural problem here.
Structural problem.
There's a CTU contract, which the former CEO admitted they have money to pay for this year, but not years 2, 3, and 4. So the question to you, because you have called for Springfield, and the governor keeps saying no special session, and that underfunding you talk about in the state law, they're going to ramp up to that funding in the next few years.
Well, I mean, I think there is an opportunity for progressive revenue at the state level. There's an opportunity for a taxing system similar to the state of Minnesota. So there is precedent for creating systems to bring more revenue in. I would also say that I think that there is an appetite in Springfield that there hasn't always been to actually get this piece right. Because remember, even though Chicago's a global city, for decades we were 49th in public education. So there's been movement, but we have to be leaders in this moment, because if we do not find the revenue to properly fund Chicago or Illinois schools, when these cuts hit from the federal government, it will be catastrophic for districts across the state. And for those of us in leadership, there's no talking points that can get us away from that.
Angel Gutierrez, what are the Trump federal government cuts, the end of the Department of Education? What's that going to cost CPS?
I mean, it is 15% of our budget. So I want you to think about that.
So does the budget deficit right now include that?
Correct.
Okay.
So we're talking almost $1.4 billion in the projected budget for next year. And so should anything change in Washington to affect that, to G2's point, right, that just adds more fuel to the fire here in terms of the cuts and in terms of the things that face us as a district. And again, we've inherited this, and part of what we've been trying to figure out is, you know, we need a little bit more runway so that we can continue to engage with our stakeholders. I think one of the nice things is, you know, we just finished these wonderful community series of budgets with the community. Budget
hearings, community forums. Yep.
And having people come to them and listening to them, making them part of that process. And the one thing I think that we heard over and over was to make sure that we did everything in our power to preserve cuts from the classroom, right? And I think we all agree that we want more revenue in the classroom, and so we need to figure out those other pieces.
You know, the issue of borrowing was so contentious that the previous school board resigned. It was a huge sticking point between the mayor and the school CEO. Can the district afford more borrowing when it's really in a lot of debt and it's going to pay high rates?
Well, to be candid, that is not our first choice. But I also think that we have to set precedent by saying we will not cut to the classrooms of children who have been historically marginalized. We will not say that that's palatable. For us, that's not palatable to say this child is gonna lose their special ed teacher, or these teacher aides are gonna have to lose their jobs on the south and the west sides of Chicago. So I think for us, we have to say that if that is an option, we have to tie a tourniquet in the wound, and then we have to heal the wound. Heal the wound is looking for long-term funding, changing the infrastructure, finding additional revenue, and I believe it's doable. It's doable because I think there's an appetite for it, and the call for a special session is not just a call from people in Chicago. I've been talking to school board members across the state, and there's unity around this, right?
So this might be a more successful strategy to bring all the state's public school districts together, not just Chicago.
Yeah, it can't be just Chicago.
No.
I think if we go down, and we've seen that, if Chicago goes down, no one else wants to help Chicago. But if you start to form a large coalition of other stakeholders who have a fight in education, you bring them along, and then maybe you start to build consensus
And,
downstate.
lawmakers represent all areas of the state, so maybe they'll listen. Okay, Aaron G2 Brown, Angel Gutierrez from the Chicago Board of Education, thanks for joining me.
Thanks a lot, man.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Good to see you. We'll keep following this. Some local hospitals are in the news this week over the controversial subject of gender-affirming care for minors. Lurie Children's Hospital, Rush University Medical Center, and UChicago Medicine all announcing they are suspending that care. In a statement, UChicago acknowledges it was a difficult decision, but says it was pressure from the Trump administration that pushed them over the edge. Quote, "We reached this conclusion in light of emerging federal actions which would place at risk our ability to care for all Medicare or Medicaid patients. These patients make up the majority of those we serve as the largest Medicaid provider in Illinois. This step is necessary to ensure UChicago Medicine can continue serving our broader community." We spoke just a few moments ago with local activist Shannon Lynn Parker about it.
Putting the hospitals on blast and looking at them as the bad guy, if you will, in this moment is not helpful. The reality is that these are things coming from our federal government, and it appears that our federal government is using trans folks as a bargaining chip. And again, it just puts systems like hospitals, namely Rush and University of Chicago and potentially others, in a bad spot.
Let me ask you, what the Trump administration and Republicans have contended is they're trying to outlaw what they call gender ideology. They believe it's a political ideology. They've called it mutilation. Do they have legitimate concerns about young children going through some of these procedures if perhaps maybe later in life they regret it?
So while I'm not a doctor, what I do know is that in the hands of a skilled doctor, mutilation is not something to be concerned about. We know that according to the standards of care, that this is legitimized treatment that saves lives, right? That helps young people with their mental wellness, with their emotional wellness, but also with their physical wellness too. So I don't know which medical book our administration is reading, but what I do know is that skilled professionals who have dedicated their lives to this work know best. And again, we see very positive results from young people who are accessing gender-affirming care.
What's going to happen now that these very well-regarded institutions no longer provide this care when there might be parents and children that still seek this out? Where are they going to go?
Well, those are great questions, right? I mean, we still have states that do allow young folks and families to access gender-affirming care through the means that still exist. So we'll see in states where gender-affirming care is pretty much banned, we'll see folks crossing state lines. Also, I think in its more detrimental sense, we'll see young people going to black markets, right? We'll see young people accessing really unsafe means of medication, which can just, again, really have devastating effects.
And for another view, we're joined now by Dr. Jared Ross, a senior fellow at the group Do No Harm that has opposed gender-affirming care for minors. Dr. Ross is joining us from Charleston, South Carolina. Thanks for speaking with us. Dr. Ross, do you believe that this is the right way to go about this? Essentially, the Trump administration has threatened a loss of Medicaid funding, and it's forced hospitals to drop this care. Is that the right approach?
Paris, we've seen this start in February after the executive order with Lurie Children's Hospital and numerous other hospitals across the country. But as these executive orders have been challenged and these restrictions have been clawed back, we've still continued to see hospitals announce that they are stopping these procedures. And I think hospitals are waking up and realizing that now is the time to stop maiming and sterilizing, confused children with the lie that they can change their sex. Nearly all of these kids are suffering from treatable mental health conditions, anxiety, depression, autism, and instead we take the focus off of what we can treat and mutilate them to fit this feigning mental image.
At the same time, the American Academy of Pediatricians has a different view. I mean, they have repeatedly endorsed gender-affirming care as the best treatment for minors experiencing what we want to medically call gender dysphoria. So why do you believe that the majority opinion here among physicians that treat pediatricians is wrong?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is an opinion that's set by people who have ideological and financial interests in continuing to mutilate children here. And when we look at these large evidence-based meta-analyses like the CAS review coming out of the UK and the HHS report from earlier this summer, we see that there's no good evidence that any of this treatment improves either health or mental health outcomes for these children. And there's plenty of research out there showing the severe harm of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and these so-called sex change surgeries on children.
At the same time, why shouldn't this be an issue that parents get to decide on their own with local physicians?
I think parents are being manipulated. We know that there's this suicide myth that's being used to manipulate vulnerable parents to say if you don't affirm your child's confusion, they're going to kill themselves. And, you know, medical care is just not provided under the threat of suicide. And we know that this just clearly is false information. We have the landmark CAS review. We have studies out of the UK and Finland. We have data in the UK from before and after puberty blockers were banned in the country. And in fact, we've got data out of Sweden that shows that adults that go through these procedures actually have a 19-fold increase in suicide.
So obviously a very contentious issue in the medical community as well as the political community. Now, Dr. Jared Ross, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thanks for having me, Paris.
You bet. Next guests are set to take the stage at the Goodman Theatre tonight, tomorrow, and Saturday for a two-man show. Here's the thing. There's no script. There's no rehearsal. There's even no plot. The entire show is improvised from scratch. TJ and Dave is the name of the duo, and they've been heralded as the masters of long-form improvisation, one of the great art forms, indigenous, of course, here to Chicago. And joining us is TJ Jagodowski and David Pasquesi. TJ and Dave, thank you, guys. I'll throw this question out to anybody. For the uninitiated, tell the viewers what they can expect if they come to the Goodman this weekend.
You scared the hell out of us with that intro. So there's going to be no script, no plot, and
well, you're going to create it from scratch. I know that.
What can they expect? That we will not have prepared.
Exactly. They're going to pay big money for two people that have not prepared anything. But you know, I'm huge fans of yours. I saw you years ago. But seriously, I mean, tell us for the viewer that might not know the whole TJ and Dave experience. Give them a sense of what they can expect.
Ideally, if we do it okay, it'll more resemble a one-act play than maybe some improvisation they might be more familiar with. So hopefully there'll be interesting characters dealing with interesting things. Maybe it'll be funny. Maybe it'll be a little bit sad. But yeah, we will be there and we'll be improvising in front of you and hoping along with you that it goes halfway decent.
Right, and Dave, that's the kind of thing is like people might think of improvisation as a troupe just trying to be funny and create humorous moments, but you guys are very serious in this 1 hour improvised play of character development and plot development. Can you explain how you go about that?
Well, right. It's we kind of just follow what's in front of us, and oftentimes it's entertaining, but sometimes it might be a little bit more heartfelt or sincere, or sometimes it's creepy or scary sometimes. But hopefully we kind of ask the audience to come along with us and see what this thing's going to be about. We all are looking forward to what the evening's going to be. And when it's over, there's no way we could have predicted that we'd end up where we did. It's more exciting that way, I think, than
David,
being prepared.
it sounds like there's a tow truck behind you, but I'll say that's the interesting thing is you and the audience are going to be experiencing all of this for the first time. TJ, I love the art of improvisation. It's a beautiful art form because it's all about letting go of your ego and listening and responding to the other person. How have you two been able to develop your own rapport around that?
Well, I'm always surprised by what Dave says, so it's easy for me to pay attention to him because I also like him a lot, maybe even love him. I don't know. Yeah, it's when you're inside of it, the good part is I only have one thing to do, and that's pay attention to him. And even someone as lazy as me can do that for about an hour. And like I said, I'm always intrigued by what he says and does. So it's a pretty easy assignment to pay attention to him.
And Dave, are there ever moments where you come off stage and you're like, wow, I didn't know that we had that in us. I didn't know I could create that kind of a character or that kind of a story?
I think all the time it's kind of a surprise to see what happened. I don't think either of us set out to do anything, stellar or anything like that. But when it happens, it's fun to recognize and look back on it like, oh, wow, that guy did this and that guy did that. And a friend, I remember retelling a show to a friend of mine and saying, oh, this guy ended up in real serious trouble, ended up in jail. And he goes, that's you, right? And but it kind of isn't. We're just kind of doing what reveals itself to us. It's a weird thing to try to explain.
It is, because you will say like, boy, that guy was the worst human being I've ever seen. And all the words came out of your own mouth, so they were in there somewhere. You didn't know until called upon in that moment. But yeah, that guy was horrible. I hate that guy. And I said and thought everything that he did the whole time.
Well, perhaps it's in all of us, the good and the bad, and you're just.
You didn't think this talk would end up here, Paris, huh?
I did. I think this
all
is
in us.
Improvisation is a very philosophical conversation. Dave, are there ever moments where it's a high wire act? I mean, are there moments where you're panicking? Like, where do we go from here?
Well, I do think that that's one thing that TJ and I either started out with or certainly have developed, that we're not terrified of when it's quiet. And because something's still going on. Most of the time, I think the reaction is to say something if it's quiet, and that's not necessarily our reaction. These people aren't talking right now. People do that. They just sit there without talking.
And I think we've said before, David, that if we promised it would be funny or if we promised it would be interesting, then we'd worry more about those quiet times. But if the only promise is that it's improvised, then that holds true even through those quiet times or not knowing what to do next. Usually, if you don't panic in that time, the next thing will show itself. But but if we promise like this is gonna be the funniest thing you've ever seen, then that would get pretty darn scary in there. But if we promise that this might be utterly unentertaining, then it looks like we're doing our job.
So the key is to set the expectation. All right, our thanks to TJ Jagodowski and Dave Pasquazi. That is all the time we have tonight. We're back Monday. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for joining us.